Welcome to the second part of the lecture series on the temple bell by B. Sugathakumari. So in this video, we'll be looking at a detailed analysis of the poem. Alone, I watch and brood over the temple gopuram, now a shambles. The sanctum bat infested, the ancient banyan tree crouching on its roots, the moss-covered pond, the empty hands of broken lamp holders, and the quiet, deep solitude. Where I stand contemplating them, suddenly inside, the twinkling sound of a tender bell. The poem begins on a solemn note as the poetic persona or the speaker dons the mantle of a brooding spectator. The speaker is looking at a dilapidated temple, one that is slowly crumbling to the ground. The temple gopuram, which should have been resplendent in its glory, is now in shambles, which means it is not well kept and it is on the verge of ruination. The sanctum, which is the most sacred part of the temple, where the deity is housed, is now infested with bats. That line shows you the absolute state of disrepair. The sanctum bat infested, because sanctum is a place that should be preserved with utmost care. But now in this temple, it is infested with bats. The temple is no longer a sacred place. It is covered in rubble and the bats are its only inhabitants. Like most temples, we see the banyan tree in its vicinity. It is so ancient that it is described as crouching on its roots. The roots are bent and the image conjured is that of an old temple and its dilapidated surroundings. The pond is moss covered, another image that suggests disuse. People no longer use the pond and therefore it is covered in moss. The figurines of lamp holders that adorn the gateway of temples are here portrayed as broken and empty-handed. The figurines are not maintained properly and hence they are broken. There is no one to light the lamps and hence they are empty-handed. The succession of images evokes in the reader a sad and gloomy atmosphere of neglect. The speaker is somber, very serious as she muses about the temple. The phrase quiet and deep solitude indicates a state of profound silence that is brought about by such stark loneliness. It is in such a reflective mood that the poet hears the first twinkling chime of the temple bell. The poet's initial reaction is one of surprise. She didn't expect any other presence here, and suddenly she's taken aback by the strange presence of the bell. Who tarries here in this lonely gloom? The bell tolls to wake up whom? As she encounters the unexpected presence of the temple bell, the poetess wonders about the possibility of another presence waiting here in this lonely and desolate place. She cannot think of any other presence who would want to be present in this strange environment seeping of silence and solitude. She wonders whether the bell chimed to wake someone else. The poetess is seen mulling over the presence of someone else other than her. As I turn back in the dark, there hangs a bronze bell, its tinkling sound coming from no ringing hand, spilling over the wind. Far, far away from the human touch, somewhat like a Munikanya in meditation, a broken temple bell that still chants, though in shattered tunes. The poetess contemplates on the sudden sound of the bell and turns back, half expecting to find someone there. But she finds only the bronze temple bell, whose chimes are born out of the gentle touch of the wind. There is no human hand trying to ring the bell. It's only the wind. Instead of a human presence, the poetess finds the presence of the nature and the elements. The temple bell is away from the presence of human touch and assumes the remoteness or the austerity of a Munikanya who is meditating. The metaphor of comparing the bell to the Munikanya. This metaphor reinforces the detachment of the temple and its surroundings. It is far away from human touch. Though it is broken, it is still a temple bell that continues to chant even though there is no one to listen to its music. The bell continues to chant its prayer. It is not affected by the lack of an audience. One can perhaps argue that the bell is unlike humans who do everything to gain attention. And who is here to listen? A god turned to a mere rock? Or the rocks who come stealthily to carry away the god? Or the horde of bats fluttering in the ruins? Or the sulking night spirit? Now the question is, who will listen to this broken temple bell as it chimes alone? The god in the temple is no longer perceived as a god. It is only a piece of rock, bereft of believers and shorn of faith. The god figure loses its significance and becomes just another piece of rock. Such a god, bereft of godhood, won't be listening to the bell. The temple might be frequented by thieves who want to take the deity and sell it in the black market. Such people obviously lack morals, scruples, and they definitely won't be listening to the chiming bell. The only other living beings in the temple are the huge horde means a large group, a horde of bats who won't be interested in the temple bell or its lonely song. So the poetess suggests that since the natural world lacks interest in the temple bell, maybe an angry night spirit, which is an inhabitant of the supernatural world, might show some interest in the bell. The bell that now chimes in the wind was once cast in bronze in smelting heat and hung up above in the holy corridor by someone, his palms joined together in prayer. In times redolent with fragrant flowers and lamps shining bright as the bell spread its radiance on the god all smeared in sandal paste. The bell that hummed songs at the touch of the wind whispered the excited people. The poetess now indulges in a nostalgic reimagination of the past. The bell that remains ignored in the present was once cast with the greatest attention paid to detail. In the distant past, it was crafted with a lot of love and devotion because this is no ordinary bell, it is a temple bell. So that much attention must have been given to the making of the bell. The poetess imagines the bell being cast in bronze. The process of extracting the metal and casting it into shape using high temperature is signified by the word smelting. The bell must have been hung up in the corridor of the temple, and that is why she uses the phrase holy corridor, probably by the temple priest, and the endeavor must have been one that necessitated a lot of prayer. It was with utmost devotion that the bell was hung in the corridor. The day must have been marked for its auspiciousness. When the poetess describes the past as times redolent with fragrant flowers, she's describing a time when human beings had not lost their faith. Redolent means smelling strongly of. Okay, so in this case, the entire atmosphere was charged with the smell of the flowers. In the past, people believed in God, in values and ethical behavior. But all that is lost now. When the bell was hung, the whole atmosphere was charged with prayers and devotion. There were shining lamps in the temple courtyard, and the shining new bell reflected the light emitted by the lamps. The deity was covered in sandal paste, probably as part of the temple rituals. And all the people who had gathered there to pray, marveled at the newly cast bell and its melodious chime. This glorious memory of the past stands in stark contrast to the bleak reality of the present. So there was a time when everybody looked wonderstruck at the bell and marveled at its craftsmanship and the idea that a single draft of wind or breeze is enough to make the bell sing. But now, even when the bell is chiming, there is nobody to listen to the bell. The temple bell, its edges cracked, it still sings to the wind's touch. But who is there to listen now? How to hear this tinkle amidst the market's din and the leader's roar in the public square? Who cares for this frail, feeble music amidst lusty, lurid songs sizzling away in movie theaters? The passage of time has drastically altered the perspectives and morality of humans, but the temple bell remains the same. It still continues to sing when the wind touches it. Earlier, there were eager devotees waiting to hear the chime of the bell, but now there is absolutely no one. The poetess wonders as to who will listen to the bell's tinkling, and then she rephrases her question and asks whether anybody will be able to hear the bell. Now, why does she rephrase her question? She rephrases her question because the modern world is characterized by the hustle and bustle of frantic activity and busy lives. The poetess makes a list of the noises associated with the modern world: the clamor of markets, the cacophony of political speeches, and the blare of sensational and innuendo-filled movie songs. Amidst such overwhelming noise, nobody has the time or patience to listen to the faint and weak sounds of the bell. Through these lines, she's hinting at the erosion of values that one sees in the contemporary world. Earlier, in a time in the past, people gave importance to prayer, but now all are carried away by the manifold pleasures offered by the material world. The bell here becomes symbolic of faith and ideals that are no longer accessible to modern man. We live in an age where religion has lost its significance, and this is evident in the broken temple bell and its solitary chant. The lights are out. Exit all. Exit the priest too, famished, leaving the god alone in the dark. The bell is here seen as the last remnant of a fading faith. All the others have left the temple. Even the temple priest has forsaken his deity, and the god is now all alone in the dark. The darkness here stands for the moral darkness that has enveloped mankind. The light of faith has been extinguished, and the believers and priests have left the temple, leaving the concept of God as an illusion that holds no value in the present world. The priest is described as famished, hungry. What hunger is this? It is a spiritual hunger. The spiritual hunger is symptomatic of the modern world. But you can also argue that as people stopped coming to the temple, the priest must have been unable to earn his sustenance, and thereby he was hungry. Yet, why this chime from the bell? Jarring notes in the lonely dark. Perhaps it is doing its dharma, singing out songs now faded that once it sang to glory. It sings of the spade that reached out in the dark mine where it lay asleep, of the god of fire who sanctified it in the heat of meditation, of the ancient dawn that gifted its melody, of the hand that hung it up here in prayer and then wiped the streaming tears, of the luster of the primal sound echoing inside every day. There is nobody to listen to the temple bell, and yet it continues to chime. Seeing this, the poetess reasons that the bell must be doing its dharma. There is no one to listen to the bell, and its music is perceived as disturbing notes in the darkness. Jarring means disturbing. The poetess imagines that the bell is singing out the faded versions of the once glorious songs that it had sang. It is perhaps singing out its cherished reminiscences, the spade that freed the metal from the dark mines, or the fire god who purified and made it fit enough to be cast as a temple bell. Sanctified means purified. Or perhaps the devotee or priest who hung the bell in the temple with utmost care and piety. Okay? The person was so overwhelmed with devotion that when he hung the bell, his eyes were streaming with tears. And then the poetess says, or maybe the bell is giving voice to the intrinsic voice of divinity that echoes inside all creations. Okay? The intrinsic voice of divinity here refers to the primal sound. Roused is the life spirit even now to the bell's lonely tinkle. The sound of the conch in the temple, the procession carrying the golden idol. 7 gold-decked elephants swaying in a row. The congregation of men around the yard. Rows of lamps shone in their hearts. As figurines of beauteous women ranged on the pillars, and 100 hands lifted to ring the bell, all in a chorus calling out to God. But there are no takers, not a soul to listen. The poetess proclaims that the life spirit inherent in the world is awakened by the dedication and sincerity of the bell's music. Roused means awakened. The chiming of the bell ushers in memories of the past when the temple and the bell were at the center of the believer's spiritual world. The poetess imagines a temple festival initiated by the sound of the conch. The golden idol must have been carried out with the worshippers thronging in a procession. The festive atmosphere is further enhanced by the imagery of the decked-up elephants swaying, the exquisitely carved statues of beautiful women decorating the walls, and a people milling around to ring the bell. In the past, men held faith close to their hearts, and the lights of their holy faith shone in their hearts. All the people who came to the temple in the past came looking for their God, the validation of their faith. In the very next line, the poetess shatters this illusion and says that in the present time, not even a single soul comes to listen to the temple bell. In this long night, you who dare to stay alone here in this temple yard, melody incarnate, you who would awaken to the touch of the wind. Though of faded sound and maimed at the rim, let me for once greet you and stand before you in prayer. The lonely bell continues to chime even in the long night of spiritual depravity. It is not affected by the changes in its milieu, as its only dharma is to continue chiming its frail music. The poetess hails it as the incarnation of soulful and divine melody. It is still sensitive to the touch of the wind, just as it was in the past. So the bell hasn't changed at all. Even though its rim is broken and its sound is weak, it continues to sing. And this is why it is unique. Maimed in this context means damaged or deformed. The poetess wishes to stand in prayer before the bell as she wants to hail its commitment. She's touched by the bell's perseverance and wishes to acknowledge the ideals it stands for.
I hope all of you understood the poem. Thank you.